just want to thank you so much for coming out here. I think it's really great that you're willing to do this. And I wanted to ask you about the library situation, because here we have this great library we're meeting in tonight, and where does that stand, and what are your thoughts on the libraries in general?
Okay, and your name is?
Ogden Kellogg.
And you live?
I live on Upper River Road, just outside of
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the situation on the libraries. Today, at our weekly board meeting, this morning at 9:30, we passed that was our second public meeting on the library situation about putting and referring it to the voters on a ballot measure. So we passed the board order today instructing staff to prepare the legal documents to turn into the county clerk so she can get to do her stuff with the budget, with the ballot title and such. Then there'll be 7 days, 7 working days from when she gets that done, should be Thursday. And that'll be 7 days from there for anybody to doesn't agree with the ballot title or something or other. And then it'll come out on the May ballot. So that's the process, that's where it's at right now. So county's referred to 2 ballot measures. One's the library today, and 2 weeks ago we approved extension. So there's 2 referred, and let me explain to you why we're referring those. Is that there's a couple ways that you can get things on ballots. You can do it through a petition. You can go out and get signatures. That's what the GMO folks did. And that'll be on the ballot as well, but they did it a different way. They went out and got a petition. There's an X amount depending on the dollar amount you're looking for and based on the population. You can do it that way, or it can be referred by the governing body, in this case Jackson County Board of Commissioners. We acquiesce to both the Extension Service and the library folks, because it takes a while to get 18,000 signatures, for example. And since both of them are out looking for additional revenues, the way the system works, that if it should pass, either one of those should pass in May, then in November, after the county assessor certifies the tax rolls, then that taxing district, just like all the other taxing districts, including Jackson County, will be able to collect taxes on that. If we wait until November, and we said, you guys go out and collect your signatures, then we'll get it on the ballot, and it'll be on the November ballot, they wouldn't be able to collect clear until November of 2015. So in an effort to try to keep the library solvent and move forward with same way with the extension service, that's the reason why we referred it. So that's where that's at.
Do you think that if this doesn't pass, like what they have in Josephine County, is an option, an option for us?
Well, we'll just have to look at all the options.
Yeah.
So we had said, quite honestly, when we passed the 13-14 budget, that unless the library supporters could come up with some way, whether it be through a special district or somewhere, so it's going to be on the ballot, that we were at the point where we were going to fund that $6 million a year out of the general fund, which is the second largest general fund expenditure after public safety. That we would start shutting down the outside satellite, if you will, libraries. We'd give 1 more year to fund the Medford Library, only because it's the distributing point. That's where the distribution's from, that's where the offices, but then if nothing happened at the end of 2015, we'd shut that down. So now that's what was passed. Now, with government, one budget committee cannot commit the following budget committee. So that was the 13-14 budget committee. Now, when we meet for the 14-15 budget committee, that could change. But that was the goal moving forward after the 13-14, when we approved that in May of this year, or 2013.
I think for this town, this library is one of the most important things we have in the town. It's just like extremely central to everything that happens here. And without it, we would really, really hurt, and we'd be very negative to the community.
Very understandable.
Yeah.
Very understandable. I've been through budget hearings on this, and then up through this situation. I understand that's actually the reason why I'm a library supporter.
Okay.
In fact, I had a jacket on today, and my library support button right have it on now. But nevertheless, we understand. But the bottom line is that we can want something all we want, but we need to pay for it.
Sure.
And that's the issue there. And so by putting it on the ballot, we could have, as a Board of Commissioners, we could have put on some sort of a fee to support libraries. We could have charged every household, for example, let's say in Jackson County, every household $10 or $15 a month. Kind of like City of Medford does, City of Ashland does, City of Talent does, and I'm not throwing, but they put fees on. And they don't, you don't have to take it to the voter, you just put the fee on, it's legal. You can do it, it's a backdoor tax, but you can do it. The majority of the board felt that that wasn't the right way to do it, that we wanted the voters to decide one way or another. Just a second, Walt, just a moment.
Okay.
So that's, I understand exactly what you're saying, and as a library supporter, then if you feel passionate about it, then, like I told the folks this morning at the Board of Commissioners meeting, now the real work begins. Because I got to tell you, you're pushing a rock uphill. 60 cents, that's the back maximum. It doesn't mean that's what they're going to, the governing body, which is not the Board of Commissioners, will be, if the people pass the special district, at the same time, they'll elect 5 at-large governing board members. That governing board members, he or she, they will determine then what the assessment's going to be. They'll be in charge of everything but the buildings themselves, actually, because they still belong to the citizens of Jackson County. So we'll still maintain those, but other than that, they'll take full responsibility, so. Okay, well.
I don't fully understand that really well. Is each city that has a library going to be taxed for its library, or is it countywide?
It's countywide.
Okay.
And we had to appear before every city council throughout Jackson County and ask them, this is state statute, in their jurisdiction, would they allow the voters within their jurisdiction, whether it be Shady Cove, Medford, whatever, to vote on this measure? They could have said no, but everyone said yes. Okay, so it's a countywide. Those folks not living in a city or municipality, they're in the county. They're the same way.
So they're taxed.
They're taxed. That's
Okay.
correct.
Let me express myself a little bit here.
I'll try to do them one at a time, Walt.
Okay. Well, I'll just hit the library.
Okay.
I'm a longtime resident of the area.
I want you to introduce yourself too, like I asked you.
Well, my name is Walt Fitzgerald. I live in Sam's Valley. I live on a century farm. It's been in the family for 135 plus years. I think there's only 2 that are older, and one's Birdsey, and the other is Hanley, and Hanley don't count. So what I'm trying to say is I know the history of the region, because I've been here all this time, all my life, and I'm well over 60. And so I know the history of what's going on and that kind of thing. And I've kind of involved myself with some of the county business in the past. So when it comes to the library, I've got a second thought, and I'm kind of neutral on it. I don't know yet how I will vote. But I will say this. Here a couple of months ago, and I think, Don, you heard me say this because I did come down to the county commission to get up and spoke about it. I tried to look up a word because I'm interested in science, and the word is archaea. And I looked in my collegiate dictionary, and it wasn't there. And I looked in my unabridged dictionary, and it wasn't there. And I looked in my medical dictionary, and it wasn't there. I finally found the definition for archaea on somebody's borrowed cell phone. That's where it came from. Technology. So, libraries are important, but I don't know how important. So, what I'm suggesting, and what I suggested before, is that in order to get maybe less government, because I'm very much in favor of less government, why don't we combine libraries with something else, like the Oregon Historical Society? Pull those 2 together and make them work together. I think that would save money and be less government for everybody to have to deal with. It's maybe not an idea that can be expounded upon real soon because we're too close to the election apparently. but it's an idea.
So let me, and you actually, I remember you talking about the word definition, but I don't remember the second part you're talking about. I don't remember you mentioning doing that or not, but
Okay.
pardon me for forgetting.
That's all right.
But one thing that people need to understand is this building, it does not belong to the city of Gold Hill. Okay, it belongs to the taxpayers of Jackson County. When the bond measure was passed, it was passed to build libraries, structures. In Ashland's case, it was for a major remodel. Okay, so the building itself, I don't know on Gold Hill, I don't know if you own the land or the county leases it from me, I don't know that for sure.
What's the question?
The land, Rick, is this?
This land is owned by the county.
Okay, because some cases it's not. In Jacksonville, for instance, we lease the land.
Unless it's not a library.
Pardon me?
Unless it's not a library, is my understanding. I mean,
No,
somebody
let
gave
me-
property.
Okay, so the bond, let me get back. So the bond was to build libraries. That's what the voters voted on. Didn't vote to operate them, but to build the building. So the bonds will be paid off in 2020. At that time, well, and I'm getting to your, maybe not the full answer to your statement, but at that time, the building still will belong to the citizens of Jackson County, but as far as the bonds are concerned, we could, Gold Hill may come to us and say, gee, we'd like to have this for the city hall. I'm just saying something. Jacksonville's actually thought about asking for that. Well, we couldn't do it now, even if we wanted to. 2020, the bonds were paid off, then we could use the buildings, we could sell the buildings if we wanted to. But until 2020, they have to remain libraries. Okay, so now we can have meeting rooms in them, you can do different things in them, but it's still a library. So you talked about combining things, right, you have something? You know, I'm for combining, I'm for consolidation where we can, school districts, police departments, I'm all for that kind of stuff, but I understand what your point is.
Good, cool, thank you.
Speaking of which, I just want to say, Rick talked about consolidation. I held my first city hall here over 2 years ago, my city council, town hall meeting over 2 years ago right here in this building. At that time, it didn't have nearly as many people, but at that time, one of their concerns was, and I've heard this by attending Gold Hill council meetings, is concern over some of the lack of police protection, if you will, or police presence, let me put it that way, particularly down along the river, under the bridge, and so on and so forth. As you well know, if you're residents of Gold Hill, you do not have a police department. The sheriff, the county sheriff, is responsible to patrol the 2,800 acres, less those incorporated cities. That's their responsibility. So in doing that, they're going to be through sometimes, they're not going to be through some other times. And here we just signed today an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Grants Pass. This was mentioned 2 years ago. That's the reason I bring it up, because I brought the undersheriff with me at that time, and he lived in Gold Hill at the time. He's retired and moved on now. But he suggested maybe folks of Gold Hill might want to consider a CSO, community service officer, for a lot less money. And so that's kind of laid around, Rick, and you may have more, may put more meat on this bones, but today we signed our agreement, intergovernmental agreement, so Gold Hill will have a CSO officer 20 hours a week. And so his or her responsibility, even though they won't pack a gun, but they'll be in a marked car, with wearing a uniform, they'll be able to do things like code enforcement if the city of Gold Hill has an issue or something, or even drive down on the beach, under the bridge, and such like that. Sometimes all it takes is an officer of one sort or another. So there's a case of, rather than Gold Hill going out and hiring their own 2 or 3 man person police department, saying, hey, is there some other way we can do that? So
That might work. That might work.
yes, ma'am.
One thing I've always,
Name, please.
I'm Judy Beals, I live up Starting Creek. I've always wondered, can the library like rent out this room for a service organization or something like that? I have heard varying thoughts on that, or are
Yes,
you
they
not
can.
allowed to?
Yes, you can.
Okay,
But it has to be a nonprofit, not for profit.
okay.
Okay, I mean, the Rotarians, if you have Rotarians or what, Kiwanis or something, they can meet here.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Again, the meeting room is all part of it, but the main purpose for the building is the library. And everything associated with libraries, computers and story time and all the programs and the wonderful things the libraries do. I have a fact sheet talking about some of the things here. This library here, and I won't bore you with everything, but over 3,000 internet lessons talking about the internet. Well, have been held here this past year. People using the computer. 1,800 people use it as a meeting room over the year, and it's all kinds of things that this building is being used for, in conjunction and ancillary to a library. I always see if anybody else, then I'll come back to you. There is nobody else, so go ahead.
Okay, I was just thinking in terms of what Walt said about kind of trying to consolidate things. Do you feel like the Rogue Valley Council of Governments is kind of a step in that direction of making things more efficient, more consolidated, and in a sense, eliminating inefficiencies?
Well, RVCOG is a quasi-governmental agency. It's the charter set up for the federal government under, I forget which governmental department, I forget. And they're responsible. Not everybody, they're not all over the United States.
Yeah.
Okay. Our RVCOG, since I've sat on that board and chaired that board, I understand their responsibility is to try to help smaller communities, especially, i.e. Gold Hill, Butte Falls, et cetera, with some of the bureaucratic stuff that goes on in state and federal government, help them work through the process. So it's writing grants, it's interning, it's looking at water quality in the rivers, et cetera.
They are facilitators.
So yeah, and they have staff people that know some good stuff. So
I'm just thinking of Portland and the Metro District. That seems so much more efficient than all these little governments kind of duplicating each other. You know,
yeah, unless you go to a Metro meeting sometime. I understand what you're saying. But you still have the satellite Clackamas, and you got all those around. It gets pretty amazing. Okay, so.
I got another question.
Go ahead.
This police officer or
Community service.
service, is the public going to have some input on what kind of things they do?
He or she will be under the direction of the city of Gold Hill.
The individual hired will be a county employee, but direction as to priorities and how we want the 20 hours spent a week will be under the direction of the city of Gold Hill.
Okay.
One of the reasons why the city opted to go this route is because administering a law enforcement agency is serious business. And I wanted it to be administered, per se, by the county sheriff, so it is at a more professional level. But the real reason why we went this way is because this community service officer will be a member of county staff, and the intel, what that person learns by walking down the street, what that person learns by visiting with citizens here, can get passed on to the rest of the county law enforcement community, where if we had a standalone agency, sometimes those communication lines aren't quite as tight. But this person, again, will be a county employee with the prioritization of the hours, and tasks will be done by the city of Gold Hill.
Okay, I appreciate that. Because like I say, I've looked at government for quite a long time, and there are some aspects of government that scare me today. I think that what we're doing is we're losing our democracy, and we're headed towards plutocracy. Plutocracy, you know what that is? It's called being ruled by the rich. That's what it is. And I think if there's a policing agency in our community, in our county, that needs a civilian police review board, it would be the Medford Police. Because Kim George is sometimes referred to as King George.
Okay, well, point, okay, this is, okay.
It's just, I just want the people to have a say
Okay.
about what kind of policing and so on.
All right,
That's what brought it
that's
up.
the MPD, so that's.
That's right.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Teresa Hart, and I live at 743 Second Avenue here in Oakville. My interest is in economic development, and so I am curious to know what the county commissioners are doing to bring new businesses to this area.
Well, you probably saw the Sunday paper. Did anybody read the mail again? Okay, forward. Okay, good. No, that's all right.
Can't remember.
But nevertheless, Bob tries. If you got the Sunday paper, front page news was about SOREDI, Southern Oregon Regional Economic Development, Inc. They are the economic development association. What's it stand for? I can't remember now.
Regional.
Part of the federal government when they hand out money for economic development. They are for, and the state of Oregon, for Josephine and Jackson County, they're the economic gurus, if you will, okay? The gist of the story is that the region is struggling because SOREDI isn't funded properly. And there were several reasons why they're not funded properly. One of the main reasons is because government isn't funding them, i.e., county municipalities are not funding them adequately. That was the gist of the story. So let me, and I'm not here to, I'm not going to argue the point. I just want to speak to the article. So to try to answer your question. So what Jackson County does is works in a myriad of ways towards economic development, maybe not in the type that one would think offhand. But creating enterprise zones. Enterprise zone is a situation where a business can come in or expand. If it meets certain criteria, it hires X amount of people, pays X amount for wages, they can get a tax abatement from 3 to 5 years. 3 years for a smaller amount, 5 years if they employ more people and their wages are so much more. Okay, so what that means is they don't pay on any of the tax bumps. They don't pay that. They get that tax break. Okay, so that's one thing. E-commerce is another thing, and actually Gold Hill is in part of that enterprise zone. The e-commerce zone is the same thing. If I'm an IT, if I'm selling things on the internet, I'm Amazon.com, for example. No, I wouldn't want to be Amazon, but if I was, and I was starting a business or expanding, say to Ashland, for example. And then I would be the same thing. I would get some sort of tax abatement for X amount of years to try to encourage my business to grow. So those are two things the counties do. We actually have the largest enterprise and e-commerce zones in the state of Oregon, including the metro area here. So that's something that the county, and SOREDI manages that for us. They're the sponsor, if you will, but we're the ones that pushes it through and gets it passed through legislation. That's one thing. Another thing we do, we've tried to streamline our developmental services, planning, building, and all. All of those departments that some people deal with if you're building, you're going to touch with them all the time, or if you had code enforcement officer, et cetera, out to try to streamline the process as much as absolutely possible. Oregon has the most restrictive land use laws in the United States. I mean, people talking about California, they're not even close to Oregon Senate Bill 100. Now, we're not going to sit here and debate that all night because it's there. I'm just telling you facts, so how it relates to the question here. So what we've directed is our Kelly Matting, who is our developmental services director, to make sure we do time studies on the folks that report to her in her different subdivisions, and we want to see how quickly things are being processed. There are certain things governed by state law, like 120 days. A certain report has to come out. Well, that's 120 days is too long. So we've asked her to make sure it's done in 90 days. And 90 days is too long. But the point being is, so that's another way we're working. So people want to come in, okay, And they, through the bureaucracy, whether it's the city or the county, they don't want to have to wait a long time. They might get their answers quicker than normal. So that's what we're working on. Are we at 100% of that? No, we're not. But we're a lot better now than we were 3 years ago. So that's another way for economic development. And that is very, very important to a developer moving into the area. The third thing is SDCs, System Development Charges. Anybody that's developed any business in the county or anywhere probably knows about SDCs. They're complex, but let me just give it to you in a simple form. It's money that's collected from you today for building to pay for something Walt's going to do in 10 years from now, as far as infrastructure is concerned. They're very onerous, but they're necessary. And so what we do is every year we go through a study and check out our SDC fees to make sure that what we're charging, state law says that we can't make money on them. You can only charge fees unless you're the airport or the fair or parks. You can only charge fees to cover your cost, period. You can't say that and all of us add 10% for overhead. You can't do that. So one can make the argument and say, well then, if your fees are so high, obviously your department's not very efficient. And I hear that all the time, quite honestly. But that's not necessarily true. We watch that all the time. I'm saying it's untrue completely, but we watch it. So that's another thing, because if I got to pay X amount of money to develop here in Jackson County, I want that number. And you hear about communities or counties or states losing large projects because the incentives weren't as large there. Incentives, the downside of incentives is that large corporations can move in, take full advantage of the incentives run out, and they're all on timelines. Then they leave. Classic example, Eugene Springfield. 18 years ago, Sony was looking on the West Coast to put a manufacturing plant. Medford, actually, that's when I was president of SoReady, we thought we were in the ball game. No, we weren't, but we thought we were. Point is businesses kind of play, I mean, their bottom line. I understand why they do it. We're playing one off against the other. So anyway, Springfield Eugene won. Built a wonderful, if you've ever been in North Springfield, just before you get off to the right is the Carnival Cruise Line thing out there. You see it off on the east side of the freeway. Just behind that, it's a beautiful business park. Absolutely gorgeous business park. And at one time, Sony and their suppliers occupied the whole thing. It was great. As soon as the incentive was up, they were gone. So, and it happened about the same time the recession hit. So here's Springfield, Eugene, with all this open Class A office space and manufacturing space, no taxes. All that infrastructure they put in. So that's the downside. I'm not throwing them, I'm not saying they did bad or I'm not even throwing bad things at Sony. I'm just saying that's the thing when you're looking at trade-offs. Because a lot of people say, well, why don't you just, I hear this quite often, why don't you just do away with SDCs? For my project, why don't you just let me not do that? Because if you did, maybe we'd come here. Well, see, if I do it for you, then I'm trying to get Nicholas into the business. He said, I heard that, see what I'm saying? So that's the thing. I'll be with you in a minute. I know this is a long answer, but I'm trying to give you, because the county is very involved in economic development. We formed an economic development advisory committee. Your husband has made a presentation to. Steve's come and made a presentation to about on the water park. The idea was, what I did is I brought in business leaders from around the valley, because I'm a county-wide guy. To come in and say, what can we be doing as a county? What things are we doing? We touched on some things, streamlining regulations, et cetera, et cetera. What can we be doing to help the economy? So we brought them in, they've been working for 3 years now. I think that's a good deal. We also brought in Ron Fox from SoReady and Brad Hicks from the Medford Jackson County Chamber. Now, the last thing I'll touch on is we did a job grant program for 2 years. We took $150,000 of your money, taxpayers' money, for 2 years in a row, and we incentivized job creation within Jackson County. Rogue River and Murphy Plywood benefited from that. The radio design benefited in that. The deal was is that we gave $2,000 on a one-time shot per employee, new employee, that made better than the county average, and that would be employed for 1 year, up to 25 employees. So, and we did that for 2 years. Private enterprise created, we didn't. Private enterprise, but just some help from us, a lot of other people, employed 204 people. Not people think 204, that's not very many people. But if you're a family, and I'm one of the guys that just got, or gals that just got hired, I'm supporting a family of 4, yeah, I got a job. If I'm an employer, and we had employers tell us, we've had large ones and small ones, like I say, had 5 as a minimal amount, tell us that, you know, your 10,000, 25,000 wasn't the deal maker, especially for larger companies, but they said this showed that Jackson County's serious about business. So those are sort of some of the things that we do. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, Paul wrote another down here, not in the city,
Okay.
the waste. Hindsight being what it is, given their situation with Sony, in retrospect, would they not have benefited greatly to have extended that program and maintained the facility and the jobs that it created?
Actually, there's tax law in the state of Oregon that precludes that, but let's just say there wasn't. Let's just say there wasn't, because 3 to 5 years is all they can do that. Now, you have the governor's strategic stuff, there's some other stuff, but for the program I'm talking about under enterprise zones, it's like 3 to 5 years. When, let's just say, let's use the county. When we say we do that, the county receives from you, each taxpayer in here, homeowner in here, $2.01 per thousand. That's what comes to Jackson County. Now, when you look at your tax bill, you're saying, oh, no, I'm paying 17, 20, whatever the number is. Where I'm going with this, that's all the other taxing districts, school districts, vector control, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, school bonds, all those things are all lumped into that. So when the county says, okay, we're gonna do it, we're gonna take that off, we can't, because then the school board, the school district's gonna come and say, wait a second, you know, see what I'm trying to say? So yes, I understand on the face of it, it looks like, yeah, well, okay, if they're still hiring people and they're here and they're developing, et
Yeah,
cetera,
I got 100 more taxpayers.
yeah, well, for the county, yeah, so, but those taxpayers, so, here's another, this is another fact, I think it's kind of surprising. Actually, every person who moves into Jackson County, when we grow, actually cost us money. When you're talking about taxpayers, the services that I don't only speak for the county, I'll let the city speak for themselves, I'll let Rick speak for Gold Hill. Actually, we don't collect enough money in that $2.01 to cover everything it cost us for that new person in here. But we're a public agency, so hopefully the raising the boat, that level of the boat. So I hope that makes some sense to you.
It does, I just, it seems like there needs to be a little more flexibility in their thinking.
Okay, wait a second, is there any, come on, Councilman, have you got anything?
Question? No,
Okay.
I'm just listening. Oh, talk to me.
Oh, I'm talking to her.
I was interested, we talked the other day briefly about bus service out here, transportation. You know, I was sure we're losing our bank in April. And a lot of folks don't have internet and, you know, Steve brought up the point that the post office used to be in the banking business back in the 30s after the Great Depression. And they would do basic credit cards, maybe money orders, and not credit cards, but vouchers sometimes. Do you have any ideas? I mean,
On
the only town that doesn't
the
have
transit situation, is that what you're asking?
the transit first, and maybe
Specifically?
the bank, you know, side.
Well, I gotta tell you, there's some, it's not happening to Gold Hill, but I think it's something to think about, is that Eagle Point is on the cusp of working out something with RVTD to extend their bus service from White City onto Eagle Point. and they would be annexed by RVTD into that. Now, those folks would have to pay an additional tax for that because RVTD can't, there's not quite enough ridership out there to make it pay,
That's our problem too.
you know, but it's close. There's 9,000 people, I think, almost 10,000 people in the county, it's growing. So they think it possibly could. So that's little baby steps. So as you think about Gold Hill and such, we heard it the other day when we were at the MRMPO about, you know, trying to maybe work something out, maybe with the Josephine County, whatever
It's
they call their
interesting to
transit
find out how
system.
people split here. I was sharing with the mayor of Roe River, you know, that some people from Roe River go Grass Pass way, some go Medford way. And I've never really had real data for that, you know.
Well, no, I have one citizen from Gold Hills, and she always goes to Grants Pass, so.
Yeah, my father-in-law did too, but, you know, it's a funny decision. You don't know how it works.
But if you're a transit, if you're a transit company, and it's heavily incentivized already from federal government, but still it has to make somewhat sense ridership wise. When they extended their hours and moved on Saturdays to Ashland, that was a big deal for the students at SOU.
Yeah.
That was a huge deal for SOU. Their ridership picked up, and actually they were ended up coming up into the black on that area. But it's a gamble for them all the time.
I was thinking more like maybe a van, like a 10-person van, once in the morning, back in the afternoon or something, you know, just to start. If we fill that up, then we could rethink. But I don't think a RVTD district would flow down here now with our infrastructure problems. And
Well, I just think with your number of people, the ridership. But that doesn't mean that you can't approach
Yeah.
their board and say, in fact, one of the gentlemen that's running for county commissioner, running for my seat, is on the board of the RVTD. You know, Rick,
Dyer.
Rick.
Dyer.
What was his last name? So, I mean, it'd be worth calling and asking. I mean, just say, you know, is there something that, but I'm sure they've thought about things like that, but it never hurts to prod the goat from time to time.
maybe the community service officer can take 3 back in when he goes, you know, back
Yeah.
home.
Yes, sir.
Well, let me kind of jump back a little bit if I can. Since I've been here a long time, I've kind of invested in real estate. And I tried to sell a piece of property here a year ago, and I couldn't even get one bid. And I was told that the reason I couldn't was because nobody wanted to come to Jackson County, because the rules and laws were way too heavy, too much. I've been told that. Now, I'm not going to try to explain out the differences of that. Here about 3 years ago, I built a house, and I paid all the fees and all this kind of business, and believe me, it amounted to upwards of $15,000 plus. I had a neighbor that sold his piece of property. He bought a piece of property here in Gold Hill, and he wants to build a house up there on the corner as you go around. And he's saying that he's going to have to pay somewhere around $25,000 in fees and this kind of thing. I think if we go too far with that, we're actually keeping business out of the county. I don't know where the balance is, but I bring it to your mind.
No. Well, I hear that all the time, quite honestly, and from developers as well as individuals, about the fees are too high. Like I told you, our fees, well, any fees, Gold Hill making a difference because it's law. We can only charge what it costs to operate that.
I understand that.
And let's take the county's planning department, pre-Great Recession. Jackson County in that department had 80 employees, 87, I think. This is in 2000.
Things were booming.
Yeah, things were going crazy. And in fact, from the developers, they were complaining they still couldn't get it go through fast enough. That department's 35 people right now. So it's kind of a tension. You want to make sure that you have enough people, because another thing people hate, developers, you know, they almost don't mind paying the fee if they get expedited through and get their job done. I mean, to a point. So they don't want to wait lines. Like me, when I go, I'll tell you a quick little side story about Starbucks. I don't know, people think about Starbucks, but I'm a coffee nut, so I know my coffee pretty well. But the reason why there's a Starbucks on every corner, when Schultz started in Seattle. You know, they started there at the fish market up there, okay? And he noticed that people, it got very popular very quickly, long lines of people. And pretty soon he'd see them wandering off. And so he looked first of all at his operations, is there a way I can speed this up? Then he says, why don't I build one right over there? Now one might say, what are you doing? You're going to kind of split? Well, he says, no. He says, those people that wandered away and maybe went down to Elmer's or wherever the case may be, he didn't have a whole bunch of choices back then for good coffee. Not that Elmer's one, but, so he built another one. And guess what? He more than doubled his business. Gee, I think I'm onto something here. So, consequently, Portland, Seattle, we go to, there's a Starbucks, and of course now there's a bunch of other ones, of course, as well. But that's the reason why. So, the point where I'm trying to make it here is that you've got to make sure you have the just, you know, it's a kind of just the right, be a half a person short of providing full service, rather than a half a person long. Because a half person long is costing you, the half person short, if they'll pick up and they'll cover that. So that's where I'm going with that.
Got another subject.
Oh, wait a second, let's go to Steve, let's go to Steve here.
My name is Steve Kiesling, and I live on Upper River Road. And I'd like to talk about the Whitewater Park.
Gee, what a surprise. You want me to step aside, you want to get out the, everybody knows about the Whitewater Park, don't you?
Oh, one thing that not everybody knows is that on February 25th, oh wow, okay, we have.
Come on up here, Steve.
So February 25th, we have all of the, well, I'll back up a little bit. We have, you know, there's been talk for however many years about building a whitewater park at Tillamook Falls, which used to be called Powerhouse Rapids. And anyway, it's a huge project.
Give us the Reader's Digest version.
Okay, it's a huge project because it's never been done. But there are a lot of issues. One of them is that this is a very important area for Native Americans. I mean, in that when everybody was marched out of here in 1856, you know, just imagine when your house burns down, you go back in to get the photographic album. Well, this is when your culture is burned down. You're marched up to a reservation, and you have the chance to come back with a photographer from the Smithsonian. The place you go is there's a rock right here called the Story Chair. So this is a national monument to what was genocide. And at the same time, we're trying to build an Olympic training center, which can bring, according to So Ready, $7 million a year to the city of Gold Hill. I mean, it's a really important thing. It's also where, after 2 years of arguing on Upper River Road about where the greenway should be, this crossing here is the best crossing for the greenway. One of the things that happened is Grandma Aggie, who's the elder of the tribe, for the Tacoma tribe, had a dream about the Dragonfly Bridge. The great dragonfly came to Tillamook at the beginning of time. So she wants the Greenway Bridge. That's where the dragonfly, there's Dragonfly Bridge coming in. It's a lot of stuff going on. So trying to keep all these pieces together, which could really turn this area into a thriving community again, a thriving river community. And how to put it together. And one of the things that's happening on February 25th is a meeting of all the regulatory agencies. And I think
One stop, it's a one stop.
at one stop, and thank you for setting this up, because it's a chance for us to meet with all the people who can tell us how to do it. And we're bringing in a guy named Rick McLaughlin, who designed the '96 Olympic course, who's been here before, who said it could be one of the best whitewater parks in the whole world. So that's February 25th. But one of the things that I think could become more explicit in this, and I'd like to mention it, is that it's the Gold Hill Whitewater Park, or has been. And the key is that it's on 234, and 500,000 people go to Crater Lake every year. And we want those 500,000 people coming down the scenic byway and passing our Whitewater Park and stopping and coming into town and buying things, so we can keep our bank and stuff like that. But But this is also, it's a major county project. And the other side of the river is owned by the county. I mean, this is county property.
Yeah, we have county property here now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of county property. And the greenway needs a place to cross. And one of the prime crossing areas is a 10-acre parcel right here, where the people who own it they just died. It's going to be up for sale. It should be inexpensive, but buying that property would allow a crossing. And that's how the county gets into this, is to own this property. And so we have both, the county and the city work together on building this park, which I think is good for everybody. And that's a thought.
Okay.
Okay?
This really is an exciting project. There are some other issues, talking about regulations. There's a rock right here, Mugger's Rock, that sits right in the middle of the best chute, and it's called Mugger's Rock for a very good reason, if you've ever gone down that. And the hope is to remove that. And I said, well, gee whiz, if we had Glenn Woolbridge around, we just had him dynamited out there. But that was a different time in the 40s. You don't do that anymore. But in trying to work with fisheries and such, this is also a salmon stream, obviously, and fish win. The fish win.
Always.
I just got to tell you, fish win.
Always.
Period. So, but ODF&W has been fairly, I think, amenable. I mean, they know there's issues here. So now we've got to work with NIMS, the National Marine and Fisheries, also in there. And then also have to work with the Corps of Engineers. So there's all kinds of, and that's what Steve's talking about, getting these people here. Is there possible to move forward? And of course, there'll have to be some capital outlay there as well. But he's got some other smaller floaters back there. And if you want to talk and get involved, this is the guy to talk to. Okay. But there's a lot of things to getting back to economic development. We're trying to facilitate that in a very small way. I don't know if we're going to go buy any bunch of property, but
Just
That was
saying.
a nice pick, though.
yeah, it was. Yeah, right. Yeah, subtle as a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Can I stay on the topic of recreation?
Sure you can.
I'm Mark Warwick, I live here in Gold Hill. Question about Howard Prairie. Of course, the county took over the operations at the resort and the marina. I guess my question is, are you aware of the condition of the docks and at the resort and the marina? Basically,
Being too far out, you mean?
no,
Or just the
basically-
physical condition? of it?
physical condition of the docks, they're very close to the end of their life expectancy. I'm a member of the Road Yacht Club.
Oh,
It's been a
okay,
sailing
well, yeah.
organization,
Yeah, okay.
basically ever since the resort was created up there. There's a viable sailing community up there that does bring money to the county through moorage. Of course, there's a lot of fishermen involved up there. The condition of the docks, again, really, literally, there aren't probably too many years left. The yacht club has actually worked with Steve Lambert and John Weil. We've had discussions with them. There's been, one of our club members has done some conceptual drawings for replacing those docks. Not a cheap project, rough estimates of $1.5 million, but it is a valuable asset for the county. And there's even safety issues that are starting to come up as concerns. Some of the docks, literally, the flotation is gone. You step out on the end of them, they want to they want to buck you off. I'm just curious as to.
Well, you're kind of preaching to the choir here a little bit. Actually, Steve and John made a real good presentation to the Board of Commissioners about 3 weeks ago,
Okay.
talking about this very thing. Actually talking about parks in general,
Okay.
and then we talked about specifics, and we talked about exactly what you're talking about there at Howard Prairie.
Okay.
I think we've done some good things up there at Howard Prairie. I understand the Johnsons were there for a long time, and
Yes.
a lot of relationships and so on and so forth, but unfortunately, things happen.
Well, sure.
And so, but I think that you're going to see some real nice changes here. Docks are one of those things. It is expensive, so we're
Right.
exploring, Steve is exploring with the Oregon Parks Association, or not association, the Oregon Parks Department,
Well, I think even the Bureau of
and
Reclamation.
Bureau of Rec and such, to see what kind of grants
Right.
Walt talked about governments, that's what governments are run, unfortunately, anymore, is you gotta figure out where the money is, you gotta go figure out where you're gonna get that 100,000 or that $500,000 or whatever the case may be. I mean, we'll all have our hands out. I don't like it, but that's the way it goes. But anyway, so we are looking at that.
Okay.
I think you'll see something in the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'm curious what that has to do with Gold Hill, and what am I missing?
Well, he's from Gold Hill, so he wanted to ask a question about
I just
residential.
happen to live here.
He just happens to live here, so he has, get out your driver's
But it's
license.
yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Margaret Dials, and I live on Fifth Avenue, and I'm on the city council. And I have a question about what you can do for us economically, I guess more specific than what Teresa asked, because we are losing our bank, we may be losing the grocery store. We have wonderful opportunities with the Whitewater Park, but our downtown is not thriving, our business area is not thriving. And it would be nice to have people stop here, but for what? You know, we're really struggling with this. So I'm wondering if the commissioners have any.
Well, I certainly understand that, and I'm gonna be real blunt on that. There's really not much we can do there. I mean, specifically, there's not much we can work on situations like Steve and see if we can facilitate that somewhat. That's long-term, but we can facilitate that, we can do other than that, there's really not much we can do. We can work with So Ready, which is one of our partners, not the only one, but that's our, and we do. And, you know, someplace, I got to come back to radio design in Rogue River. Pretty amazing little companies, although they're not so little anymore. But they decided to say they moved out of Josephine County, come to Jackson County, moved into Rogue River. So already facilitated that. We can look, one of the real bright spots in the county, and I think the article on Sunday said this, is manufacturing. A lot of folks don't know that. Because we equate manufacturing with large facilities normally, you know, a car plant or et cetera, or whatever the case may be. We have, forget the number, I should know that. I'm embarrassed I don't. But a number of folks in Jackson County that are employed in manufacturing. And manufacturing goes all the way from wood products, secondary wood products, and we do have a mill in Rogue River, to high-end electric components that are exported. We just had a report from a lady's business just the other day. She exports to 80 different countries. 80 different countries out of Medford. So the point being is manufacturing is really growing from 5-person shop, 3-person shop up to like radio design, and then of course you get to the larger ones. So that's, you know, from an economic standpoint. Oh, Rick left. Oh, I didn't. Oh, there he is. We're not sitting next to your wife. We can work with that and try to feed those opportunities. Colleen Padilla Johnston can work with that, so we can look to try to. But as far as specifically, there's really not, you know, unless we decide to build a road through town or something like that. You know,
Is that a chance? Is there some chance of that? Because that was going to be one of my questions about your Whitewater thing. Part of the problem would be accessibility to it. Would there be hotels? Would there be what? I mean, how big a thing is it?
Part of what?
Go ahead, Steve, you're on.
Okay.
Oh boy, I'll sit down.
I mean, one thing that's happened as a result is that Sawyer Paddles, which is in right now in Talent, they're the owner, Pete Newport, just bought property on the river to build a house, and he's negotiating to buy space to move his enterprise here. And so the idea is that the thing about the park is you don't charge money to go, and you can't charge money for people to run the river. But what it does is it provides a magnet for restaurants to survive, stores to survive, and then ideally hotels to come in. So it takes a while. But
I think a good example of that, if I may, Steve, is the hotel in Shady Cove, right on the river, right there. I mean, that was built for salmon fishermen, quite honestly. I mean, and rafters. Now, I mean, rafters got to be such a huge deal. So, and they do really well in the summertime. They struggle in the wintertime. But nevertheless, I think that's kind of what we're talking about. Now, as far as infrastructure is concerned, 234 is a state highway. So you'd have to be working with ODOT on that. situation, but infrastructure would, I mean, that brings a lot of jobs in the short term, but I can see that, and that's what we talked about when Steve first made his pitch to us, is that we could see, not only for Gold Hill, but as it spills out throughout the county, some real benefits of people wanting to be here. And another classic example is if you go to Hood River. And whoever heard of windsurfing 20 years ago, you know? I mean, maybe some people, you may have, I don't know, but I don't know many people.
Yeah, I've seen it.
But what
Is this a destination resort?
No, I mean, it's just it's a park where people come and they park and play, but you're able to hold competitions there, and that brings people.
What is the future of the destination resort that was planned before the recession?
Well, those folks went
Aye.
banco. And so but that's one thing the county did do, is change their ordinance so allows destination resorts under certain conditions, and that was, of course, the big deal. There were the two there at the base of the Table Rocks.
Right.
But that's a possibility, so.
Is that still on the table? I mean, could it still happen?
Still could happen if somebody, all it takes is money.
Yeah.
I just want to jump on Steve's thing again. I think it's a fantastic idea. As long as I've lived in Gold Hill, I've always dreamt about this town being a whitewater village, you know, and it's not going away. Village for the Indians and whitewater for the crazy guys that go down in boats. But we have 3 motel rooms in this town, and they're lazy acres, and they're not, you know, they're not 2 diamonds, they're not even probably 1 diamond. They're nice, but that's all we have. If we had people coming, like Pete Newport, you know, or his relatives, I don't know where to put mine, you know, small house.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm saying, using Hood River as an example, because
Exactly.
that place has absolutely exploded. However, saying that, one needs to know there's another demographic that will fight it tooth and nail, because they just don't want growth. I moved to Oregon, or I'm in Oregon. Walt has lived here. I've lived here for 60 years, but not as long as Walt has. Okay, this is where I'm at. This is my tree. This is my whatever is, and I don't want it changed, and I don't want a whole bunch of people coming in here. I'm just being honest with you. Okay, I mean
That's not my attitude.
No, I didn't say it was yours.
But as a long-term resident, that is not my attitude.
Well, first, surprisingly, most of the folks that have lived here a long time, it isn't. But anyway, I'm not here to,
Can I jump back in again?
because I could really go off on a wrong.
I walked that resort at the top of the hill. Joe Stroll took me up there, and they were playing an 18-hole golf course, and you could see a mountain on every 6 holes. It was fantastic. I mean, if they'd ever got it off the ground, we were talking about taking their waste, the same way we might send our waste to Medford, pulverize it and vacuum it and ship it down a pipeline. And it never came to fruition. They went banco, but that would be a fantastic resort. I mean, I think that most of them have been, and that one would kill anybody.
If people are excited about Steve's concept here, you need to thank yourself and your fellow councilors and your mayor. I mean, they put up some tax money to do something for a study here that I think it was tax money, excuse me, Rick, I mean. But it was a commitment by the city of Gold Hill saying, we support this effort. We don't have much money, but we're here to support this the best way we can. So what you need to do is get behind your council people and your mayor and your city manager and applaud them for doing that, because they're trying to work hard and trying to improve the economy in your area. So, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, we're talking about parks. Where we live in Upper River Road, directly across the road from us is 80 acres of land that belongs to the county, Hardy Riffle Park, undeveloped park. I don't know if you visited that or if you're aware of it. It's a beautiful piece of land that has some real challenges in terms of being utilized by the public. Right now, you can't access it legally, but there's a sign that says no trespassing. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about that, what its future might be.
Well, I tell you, it is a beautiful piece of property, but it is so long-term, so far out.
Yeah.
We talk about it, and the county owns more land than we want, quite honestly. One thing is on the tax rolls, and number 2, for some sort of use. And but we have a fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers, not to just give it away. Hardy Ruffles comes up a lot. I used to fish that area all back when I had my drip boat and such, when I was younger and stronger. But we're not, I'm gonna say not. In the near future, as far as I can see out, that's not gonna be developed for some time. Now, if you were to take Steve's and start developing the whole area up, you know, it could be serious, because there's nothing prettier than coming down that section, especially since the dam's on now. Coming down the section, I mean, it's gorgeous, you know, and a lot of it is public land.
Yeah, and then my personal kind of pet peeve is that part of that parkland is on the other side of the railroad track, right in front of my gate. The county owns like a slice of land, it's maybe 2 acres, that's outside the railway right away. That is a brilliant access point for off-road vehicle mud people. And they have made a terrific mud hole on the county property, which I'm sure would not happen if it belonged to a private owner. It's just kind of beyond belief what they do.
I was not aware of that, I'll talk to Steve about that.
And so I know there's probably nothing you can do, but it's just very,
Well, you can, there's certain things, but we don't want to be, one of the things, there's a great organization called Nature Conservancy, who's done some really good things. But there's a downside to that too, because they take that land and take it off, not only the tax rolls, but they also take it and they put restrictions on it for a lot of folks. So, you know, it does take and stewardship large parcels of land, which I can understand, but also takes those large parcels of land and takes them off of public access, and so.
Another subject.
Okay.
Different subject, I promise. The GMO thing that's on the ballot,
Okay, okay.
my basic question is it gonna be constitutional?
From what the legal side tells us, yes, if it passes. The difficulty will be, you know, the state legislature tried to enact a bill that would preclude doing that. But because the GMO folks had already gone out and got petitions signed and got it on the ballot, Jackson County then was carved out of the state. So out of 36 counties, Jackson County was carved out. So if it passes, it passes. Here's where the real rub, however one believes, okay? I know how I believe, but however one believes on the issue, is that from a county standpoint, the enforcement of that is going to be incredibly difficult.
That's what I wanna ask you about.
So the rub can be, is, let's just say we're like the federal government, and I'm trying to be sensitive here, but I'm not going to enforce marijuana laws because whatever, you know. And so if we take that approach with the GMO, then we're going to get sued because it's a law. I mean, what do we have to put? The ballot measure says that the county has to pass an ordinance. Okay, an ordinance in Jackson County is a law. So if we don't enforce the law, we can be sued for not enforcing the law. So the cost, however, of enforcing that could be incredibly onerous. Number one, proving it's a GMO product, and doing that whole line thing, and then making them take it out. So from purely a financial standpoint, I'm just talking finances, okay. It's going to be, if it passes, it's going to be financially very onerous on Jackson County, the government of Jackson County to pay for it, because it's going to be very difficult. We don't have enough code enforcement officers to do that, and we know we're going to get a lot of calls. So,
I'm a rights and liberties person. And so what I see as the negative side of this GMO thing is there's two aspects, and Don, please tell me if you can add to it or delete from it. But one is it forces the county to inspect properties, private properties.
we have to get a search warrant to do that.
And the second thing, which scares the hell out of me, is that it, if I understand this right, it opens the door for third-party lawsuit on private property.
If in fact, let's say you're growing genetically modified.
I got a neighbor that.
Okay, just to say you are.
It's alfalfa.
Okay, let's say you are.
Genetically modified.
And say your neighbor is a organic farmer, okay? And absolutely does not want cross-pollination. Now, you can plant different times for the flowers to come to you. You know that. I mean, you're an agriculture guy. I'm not. I mow my lawn. if, speaking to your point, if in fact your GMO product cross-pollinates with mine, okay, if they're like species, it doesn't have to be exactly the same, it just have to be in the same.
Cabbages and kale.
Yeah, right, you're a good example. Then I can sue you for loss. The first thing is you can sue the county, because the county didn't enforce the ordinance that they just passed and allowed the GMO. See, so I'd say it's a tangle of worms,
Yeah.
snakes I think is the right word. Anyway, it really is, and so, but as far as constitutionally, I mean, the Attorney General said,
Sounds like it's two different subjects to me.
well,
Sure does to me. Commenting about genetically modified organisms, if you read your science real deep, I mean, I'll tell you, everything is interrelated genetically. It's just, it is. And I think that eventually what's going to have to happen is
thanks you guys.
folks are going to have to keep their product separate willingly, and they're probably going to have to accept a different definition of organic.
Well, I mean,
Something.
and that's a long conversation.
Yeah.
So, but if I can speak for those in favor of the ban, I mean, I've looked at this all kinds of ways, is that, and they have a good point in that geographically, the Rogue Valley, the road goes through here, and agricultural land has been encroached all over, so there's only certain sections left from the mountains and the such that are agriculturally viable. So small farmers, mainly small farmers, buying up 5 acres or so property, 15 acres, 20 acres, are growing, say they're organic growers. And there's a GMO grower over here, and there's an organic guy here. Science says that you have to have about a 4-mile difference between here and here to keep from cross-pollination.
Yeah.
The problem with our geographic makeup of what's left of our valley is if you start doing those 4-mile radiuses, now it's not quite this, but almost, it really makes it difficult. So I can understand, it's all about the money, basically. I mean, I know there's some health concerns, but it's really about the money. If I'm an organic seed grower, and we have some fairly large ones here in the county, they get really good money. I mean, really good money for organic seed. Really, I mean, big money. And so I can understand, it's an economic thing. So, you're talking about your land rights guy, so that's the tension, and here we are in the middle. They being, let's call them the organic people, they have rights for their property. The other folks have rights for their property. And so that's where the rub is so when people start talking about property rights, normally they end up talking about their property rights, not so much the other person's property rights.
I think this was put together awfully quickly, very quickly, if I recollect correctly. Boom, all of a sudden we had all the signatures we needed, and it was on the ballot. It had been written and approved. But if it's not passed, I think that would maybe give us a better opportunity to rewrite this a better way,
Well,
which I would be very open to.
the way that the House bill was passed, Senate bill, thanks for coming, Senate bill was passed, is if it does not pass, then Jackson County falls in with the other 35 counties, and you can't do it again. Now, the GMO folks said they'll challenge that to the Supreme Court, so. Everything is settled, unfortunately, in the Supreme Court, or a court, eventually, to the Supreme Court.
Well, the good news is Cheerios is non-GMO, so. There you go.
Okay,
For a while.
okay.
You sure about it?
So what's happening with water, Nicholas?
Lots is happening with water right now.
Well, why don't you tell us? Has everybody met Nicholas?
Yes, of course.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicholas Gonomie. I'm with the City of Gold Hill as an intern helping Rick out, do water quality projects and whatnot. We just got word from DEQ that our recent team deal report was passed, which is a huge deal because we were about very huge deal. We were about 2 years behind. And they weren't accepted for a couple of years, and that's a big reason I was brought in is because Rick doesn't have the resources. So it was accepted. We tried to hold a rain barrel workshop on Saturday, but guess where our friend was based out of? Eugene, Oregon. And the ice, he couldn't open his car door, so I got a call early and frantically tried to reschedule. So that's going to be on the 22nd. If any of you are interested in learning how to harvest rainwater in your house, come join us at City Hall at 2 p.m. that day. Other than that, we're going to be stenciling some storm drains. We're going to be putting a rain barrel in at City Hall. We just this past fall passed an ordinance for low-impact development in Gold Hill, which allows the development of projects in your home that are rain gardens. But a big project going forward is also storm drain cleaning. As you notice, it's been raining a couple days, and you might have noticed a little bit of flooding issues around Gold Hill, especially around Second, and also up in the hill and stuff. And that's a big problem, and that's a lot of stuff is running off into the river. And if you just look at the water, it's a little bit of petroleum sometimes, and you see that kind of oil film on the top. That's no good. And so a big part of that is getting the storm drains things so they efficiently deal with this runoff and don't pick up all this particulates when it floods. As you notice, the streets could be cleaner too. Our public works staff has been really, really hamstrung with the wastewater treatment plant, trying to get those things back up working. So we're thin on resources at every angle, but moving forward, we have a very strong plan in place, the stormwater management plan. It's a 5-year plan running through 2018 to get things back up to par, back to speed with other towns and cities in the region. And if all goes well, we'll be getting a grant from DEQ starting next year to bring someone else in after my term is over in August. So you'll have to deal with another fun person for another 11 months starting in September of this year. So hopefully Rick and I can create a positive relationship with the REV program, the program that I'm in, and bring in someone else, year after year to kind of keep the ball rolling. Because I tell you, it's tough sitting in City Hall every day with city staff of 3 total people. After I'm there, so and to try to have these big dreams with the kayak park and these big ideas with the stormwater plan, and to try to juggle all these things. I have 2 hands, but 7 projects at a time. So it's been a huge challenge. It's been an incredible journey for me. And to look at the calendar and see that I only have 5 minutes left, it's like there's kind of bittersweet, but yeah, things are moving. They're getting better. Moving forward, though, I had a lot of ideas about how to get things economically moving in Gold Hill. And just I can throw it out there while I have the floor here. I think branding Gold Hill anew would be a really good place to start. And I think that it would be kind of a way to kickstart a lot of the resources that were lacking. If people see some sort of slogan or a new welcome sign. I had the idea of an electronic sign on Second that gave you the river data, the flow data, live flow data, and temperature from the river. Just so people think about it. People drive through Gold Hill every day, and I think they forget about it the minute they drive through it. And I think we're missing an opportunity to kind of stick in their memory, at least a little bit. And, we're all very visual. That's what human beings are. They're visual. We hear something, we forget about it on the radio, but we see something, we remember it. And I think that visually, the downtown looked better if we had a sign, something visual to proclaim that, hey, the city's changing, and we're committed to that change long term. Because I think that in 10 to 15 years, this could be a very strong economic community, and I really mean that. It could be thriving. And I hope that, this is the start of it right here, everyone in this room. So.
Yeah. Are you thinking of Pete's slogan?
Oh, yeah.
Pete floated a slogan at the Can-Do meeting, and the slogan was wet, wild, and wonderful. And I think it works fantastic. And I have something that I'll share with you guys. I've been compiling a list of sort of inspirational signs and also slogans from around the area. They can be witty, they can be funny, they can be honest, sometimes too honest. But wet, wild, and wonderful is a great place to start. It kind of goes with our theme. The Rogue River is really it's the most important part of the game.
We get a lot of hits on YouTube, that's for sure.
That's for sure. I don't know if we want those hits, but yeah. But yeah, that was a good idea that Crazy Pete had, and I think that if more people just got the discussion, and maybe some sort of contest, for the slogan or something where people felt involved, I think is a good place to start. So.
Well, there you have councilman, so we're.
Hey, it's been great working with Nicholas. I mean, I don't look at runoff the same way anymore. Rick messed me up with my toilet with the wastewater infrastructure, and now Rick just got me looking at rain runoff. I was walking up the reservoir today looking at it thinking, oh, I gotta tell Nick about this.
Well, it's a one at a time.
Why put all that money all the time into
That's
the...
government in general. You know,
Why
we
put
should
it
have
to
the
the
same
park
thing.
if we're not gonna clean the river up and keep it pristine? I mean, we should be the Smith River here right now, you know?
Well, the turbidity, it'll never be the Smith River. So,
Well, okay.
sure, you're running through
We can
different
plant trees
types of
100
soil.
years.
I want to, get back, I haven't heard anything on medical marijuana or marijuana dispensaries. No problem up here?
We're waiting for other cities to be sued first. That's what we talked about that. We're kind of waiting for other cities to test this out. We would like to have something on our books, but we aren't sure.
Okay, so you have, I'd like to say, I think most of you know, I attend city council meetings around the county on a regular basis. And so here's the scorecard so far. Ashland says they're weighing out of it. You know, if you want to start one, as long as it meets the state regulations. Phoenix is taking a wait and see. Talent hasn't decided yet. Medford has. They're fighting it in court. Okay, Central Point is Jacksonville says no. They're going to pass an ordinance based on their historic definite. I'm not exactly sure. I was at the council meeting last week, and they're going to do something that they're going to say no. It doesn't fit with their city persona. Something, I don't know how that works in court, but that's so they've said no. Eagle Point is in the same place that you guys are at. They're taking a wait and see what everybody else is doing. Especially for a small community, I think the wise thing is to ride on Medford's back. I mean, they're spending big dollars at this. Let them fight the battle, them and the League of Oregon Cities. Let them fight the battle, and they've also got the horsepower to do that. And then we take a wait and see attitude, because if you do it individually, I'll be right with you, sir. Is that then they're going to, you know, the old Clausewitz tactic was always attack the weaker of the allies. Take care of that first before you solve, and that's what's going to happen there, I'm afraid. Yes, sir.
Brad Smith from River Press, but I actually live in Talent.
Okay.
With the marijuana issue, I've been watching movements with the Obama administration and Eric Holder, and it seems more and more they're going to be at some point inching towards some form, maybe decriminalization. I think that here we're going to be probably seeing some change in the legal aspects of marijuana enforcement, and it's going to be a little more not as draconian as it has been with past administrations. Are you going to be watching that to see, to make your next decision?
Well, I mean, you've got two issues. You've got medical marijuana and the dispensaries, and then you got legalization. So two different things here. So let's take what's already law in the state of Oregon, and that's medical marijuana, which I think has no resemblance to the intent of the voters who originally passed it, but I'm biased, I'll be real honest with you, okay? Either that or we're a state of a lot of sick people. You know, I don't know any way to put it. We have almost 40,000 cardholders in Jackson County. So out of 208,000 people, so that means,
Outside of, if I remember correctly, at the last law enforcement meeting about this, outside of the Portland-Salem corridor, we're like the second in the state.
we are by far and away on a percentage-wise population. We do outstrip the metro area completely. We're number one, but nevertheless, okay, it's Oregon law. As flawed as it is, I'll just leave that at that. So as it deals with the city, as it deals, as we're talking about the dispensaries, that's one thing that we have to take a look at. Now, we as a board of commissioners have not taken an official position. I can speak for my fellow commissioners only in that we wish it wasn't here, but that's about all. But it is, so we've got to figure out how to deal with it. So we've looked at different ways. Does it meet land use laws? Is there some way to put some regulations on it from land use? Now, a couple cities are looking at that. You know, we don't have a business license like Medford does, and they're doing it with the business license approach, because it violates federal law. We don't have business license in Oregon, in Jackson County, countywide. But, so we're looking at we just got, they just passed the latest news down from the legislature on the rules for medical marijuana dispensary. And there are a lot of don'ts. You can't be within 1,000 feet of a school. You can't be growing it where you're dispensing it. Anyway, in a way, in a warped way, it's almost government at its best or worst, because this is regulations. Okay, so it's kind of like if you do almost anything else when you're dealing with the government, that's regulations, whether you like it or not. So in a way, that's a good thing. But my point being is that we're, from a county standpoint, is we're taking a look at that and seeing what kind of a wait and see attitude. We want to be careful about. We have a county ordinance that says that drug stores, meaning, Walgreens, one thing, so a drugstore, at least I used to think that was what a drugstore was, can't be located on certain lands, agricultural, EFU, et cetera, et cetera. If in fact the courts find that a loose definition of a dispensary is a drugstore, then we're in pretty good shape, because we have an ordinance that prohibits that. But if they say it isn't, if it's a medical, I don't know what they call it, then we have to look at it in a different way. So, what we don't want is we don't want a medical marijuana dispensary on every corner or every county road out there, like a fruit stand or something. So we're trying to look, and I know people snicker at that, but that's kind of the way it's looked at, honestly. And people that have reasons medical reasons, God bless them. I admit I voted for it. But unfortunately, what concerns me about legalization, I'm going to switch over here and morph to legalization, is we've done a terrible job of managing the Oregon medical marijuana laws. It's not anywhere at all, like I said earlier. It is, and even the proponents will agree with you, it's nowhere near with the original law that was passed by the people. If we can't do that, what are we going to do with legalization? How are we going to manage legalization? If you're talking to any law enforcement officer, of course they're gung-ho, and I understand their issue too, but they're absolutely terrified. So everybody's watching Colorado and the state of Washington. Colorado's having some bad stuff. They're legalized outlets. They call them stores. I don't know what you call them. For an ounce of that, I think it's $80 an ounce or something. I could be wrong. I don't buy it, so I don't know, but it was something like that. But if you had a medical marijuana card, you could buy it for $40. So the idea, of course, and the main reason for that big difference in price is because of taxes, because on the legalization, you can't tax the medical marijuana, but you can tax legalized marijuana, and that's why, and you hear that argument by lawmakers saying, boy, that's a revenue stream. It's actually Oregon's #1 cash crop. Did you know that? It's Oregon's #1 cash crop.
Isn't that the problem with it though, that the money is still in it?
Yeah.
That's why the cartels came up here and did their thing. That's why the governments are now wanting to do their thing. If they just got out of the business of it, trying to collect taxes on it and anything else, anybody that wants to, I don't, and I don't intend to, but anybody that wants to, wouldn't have to buy it at all. It's a damn weed. Grow it in your backyard and smoke it until you're green.
Not today's marijuana is.
Well, it's, you put a seed in the dirt and it turns into a plant.
So anyway, so that's where we're at.
It's not, believe me.
I think we'll see a ballot here in November to legalize. I'm almost positive Normal will have some sort. The legislature's trying to be out in front of it, and they're trying to craft their own bill that says, okay, it looks like it's going to happen, possibly, so let's get out in front of it and let's try to write the right kind of rules on how it's gonna work. But everybody, quite honestly, even Washington, which is already legalized, is kind of watching Colorado. I mean, they're the mecca.
Well, the reason I made the comment that I did, I had an opportunity, a friend of mine lives in Southern California, and there's a community there that their police department set up a unit, and they have these enormous motorhomes, and they go all over the place because of what? Asset forfeiture. They go out and they make these big busts and collect all the personal property, everything. That they profit from it. That's how they built these things. And it's all based on that.
It's against
Tax
the law.
revenues or asset forfeiture, profits.
I got a real problem with
Don't
that.
get Walt going.
There's a real simple solution, but nobody wants to do that because you're not gonna grow your police department, you're not gonna grow your taxes with.
Well, let
Okay,
me add to
let
this.
Walt go ahead, Don.
Let me add to this just a little bit. It's a little bit related. How long's it been since you bought a bottle of liquor?
Couple months.
When you left the store, did you read the little label? Read that little label. I walked out of the store in Central Point, which is in the Albertsons Center.
I buy mine in California, so I pay your taxes.
But that said, that it provided to the city of Central Point $455 million. I looked at the clerk and I said, my God, are you sure this is right? And he said, yeah.
What did it say? I'm sorry.
$455 million.
For what?
To the city of Central Point, because
For one
it's
store?
located.
Can't be. No.
That's what I was told.
No. The only reason I can tell you that for sure is, quite honestly,
Just Walt buying.
there's a liquor bill now to try to change and move, so Costco can carry it like they do in Arizona and
Yeah, no,
California.
I'm not sure I'm in favor of that.
But, well, anyway, but let me get to your point. So, I mean, your question. So is that the tax money from alcohol sales in the state of Oregon goes to the Department of Revenue, and then it's allocated out based on population to the different counties and to the cities. Okay,
Gold Hill included?
Gold Hill included.
Okay.
It was here a small amount. Again, it's based on population.
Okay.
But where I'm going with this is kind of like gambling. We become addicted to sin tax, cigarette tax, alcohol tax, gambling.
How many smoking here? I don't see any hands.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, it's, you don't see, well, unless you try to go to CVS, and you can't buy it there anymore. But where I'm going with this is that government, in its search for money, has got its fingers out, I mean, all governments. So when you talk about gambling, we don't want any more casinos, we don't want this, but boy, we are absolutely addicted to the lottery, government in general. It's a huge amount of money to government. So, and that's the reason why marijuana is attractive to lawmakers, because if we can tax it, that's that money coming into the coffers. Alcohol sales, that money comes into governmental coffers. So, you kind of talking about the cartels and such like that, but I won't say government. People may not agree with me, but we're not quite to that level.
Did you read the piece today, in today's paper, about the moonshiners?
Oh, back in...
For, what, 200 years, they've been going out and busting up their stills. Now there's moonshiners coming on every corner, because why? They're gonna let them produce moonshine.
As long as they pay tax.
And put a tax.
So anyway, and now we've kind of gone off the bit on the marijuana situation, but counselors, that's something that you'll obviously, I think you're being wise and waiting to see
I
what's
think if we open a
happening.
dispensary, we should have to close a bar.
That would be good. Well, yeah, there are two
We'll trade like
issues.
Monopoly,
Two issues we have. One is the whole business with the dispensary, which we did have the beginnings of, and it was busted very promptly and never opened again. But also having grow sites within the city limits. In a small city like this, the smell is
And the
really
drive-through the bank.
terrible. Yeah, so, if it's an agricultural product, it belongs in an agricultural area, in my opinion.
Yeah, of course, there is one plant, I don't grow it, but one plant isn't going to stink as much. It's usually when you get more. So what's happening with medical marijuana is growers, and not all growers, I'm painting with a very broad brush, is they're not allowed, a grower is not allowed to make a profit on the marijuana, okay? On medical marijuana, that's the law. You cannot make a profit. It's a non-profit situation. Well, How well does that last? So I've got a couple of patients on, and I'll grow 6 plants. Okay. So what happens if I just grow a 7th plant?
Right.
And, you know, because that
Or
money's
for
all.
2 other people and the plants
Well,
are 8
so my
feet
point being
tall.
is that's, but you, in that case, you know, I tell you what, you've got somebody, you have a CSO now, but your Sheriff Winters is just absolutely anti-marijuana, so you just have to make a phone call to his office if you think if something's happening, but you should have something in your codes about that. I mean, agriculture, you can grow a small
Not
amount, but
yet.
you can't, commercial.
I think if you are not commercial, but if you're growing for like 2 or 3 other patients, it's legal. It's not considered commercial. And if you have a really green thumb, you can have, you know, your entire backyard full of marijuana.
Well, they gotta be able to prove that they have the card carriers
Yeah.
for that. So, anyway. But we haven't done a good job of, like, so I say, it scares me about legalization, because we've done a really lousy job of doing that, taking care of the medical marijuana. But I wanted to throw it out and see how you folks felt, if there's
It's
an
a
issue
big
here.
issue. We've got
And
to
because you're gonna hear people on the other side. I mean, I go to, like I said, city council meetings, and they're there, and they're speaking to council people. I've heard them in Dallas, I've heard them in Phoenix, I've heard them in Medford, I've heard them in Ashland, and you know, they're talking about their chronic pain, and medical marijuana is the only thing that gets them through the day. Okay, now, whether one wants to, and then there probably are people like that, but I don't know if there's 40,000 in Jackson County, but there probably are. But that's what happens, you start playing on emotions and such, so it's a really a sticky wicket. I'm not old enough, I'm old, but I wasn't old through prohibition. But I can only imagine, you know, Oregon used to be a dry state.
Yeah.
And that whole deal, in fact, it's fun reading, for the 4 people who read the Medford Mail Tribune, they've got a great, inside the front page, they have 100 years, and it's really cool. They take articles from the paper of 100 years on that date exactly. And so now, I think today or yesterday's was about a deal because the Temperance Union is going through, and they're trying to get Oregon to join everybody else and go dry, and so it's no different in a way than what we're facing right now with marijuana, if you will, principally.
But one question always comes up, people have asked me this, and I wonder myself, why, if it can be used as a medication, which it can be, why don't we dispense it in pharmacies? Why do we need a separate
Because
institution?
it's a type class 1 narcotic, as far as the federal government's concerned.
Narcotics are also dispensed in pharmacies.
Well, yeah, they are pharmacies, and yeah, that's correct. I mean, I don't know the full answer, I'm not a doctor, I understand that. But I tell you what, if I had my choice, and I'm probably not gonna make any friends here, if I had my choice, if I could do away completely with alcohol or marijuana, if I had to take a choice, they said, okay, Don, you're emperor of the world. You had a choice. We're gonna get rid of either alcohol in all of its forms, or marijuana, just marijuana, I'm not talking about opiates and such. I'll take marijuana. Get rid of alcohol. We have more, alcohol is our #1 addictive substance abuse. We have more violence committed by people using alcohol. It's by far, it's our #1 health problem, but I don't like marijuana either. I'm just saying if I had a choice, so. Anyway.
Are we talking about this because today Congress asked Obama to reschedule marijuana? I saw that in the news today that Congress signed a letter to the president asking him to more or less legalize, but definitely reclassify marijuana from a Schedule 1 down to a 2 or at least more. I mean, I don't know if you guys read the news or not, but that's, yeah, so.
Was it one branch?
The governor, I mean, the president can probably, sponsor something, but I think Congress has to do that. I don't know. Way out of my league.
Yeah, if you want to read about it, it's probably on.
Go off way out in the weeds on another direction.
To
get people to come to this guy's water park, you gotta have an attractive little community, right? You brought up Hood River, for instance, and the metamorphosis that took place in Jacksonville from the 60s. This place, we sit right on I-5. We've got this resource that very, very few communities have. What does it take? Well, and this is just a real random example, but I have neighbors that garage their boats, their RVs, their automobiles under little blue tarps out in the yard, because if they put a concrete floor down and stick build a garage, what's it do to their taxes? And what does that do to this community? I mean, there's a lot of places that if you just drive around and you can see what's going on, not everybody has the means to do so, but I think a lot of people would. And you're gonna attract a lot of people if you can pretty the place up, if you got some 4 or 5 hotel rooms instead of 3, and, you know, a lot less blue tarps that are shredded from the wind, and
Well, actually, you should
It
have,
helps.
I think the city would have an ordinance or a code about something, how many vehicles can be parked on a piece of property. You know, the county does.
well, it's not even the number of vehicles. My thing was more so just the temporary nature thereof. You know, so many things, you've got specific dimensions, a shed size. If you go over 12 by 12, it's taxable. You know, if you build a garage, it's taxable. There's a lot of things that, you know, it's a trade-off for the community, I'll grant you, but I think people would step up and want to beautify the place if it wasn't going to dramatically impact them, you know, in November.
Well, there's your opportunity, you have a couple of council people here, so go to a council meeting. I'm a firm believer, and it's one reason I hold town hall, I'm a firm believer in listening to people and about their concerns, even if we disagree.